welcome to the first ever Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility Conference. I'm Karen Potter, and I'm the director of the conference and the National CSR Awards. We are delighted to be hosted by the Crystal. This is a fantastic building. It's one of the most sustainable buildings in the world. BREEAM, outstanding, platinum LEED. This is the kind of place that inspires us, and we can actually dare to have the conversations that we plan to today around ethics and social responsibility. We started the National CSR Awards in an effort to bring something unique to the marketplace. This is not about backslapping, congratulatory woo-hoos. This is about taking a hard and serious look about the challenges that face business as we try to take the next step. We are addressing social responsibility in the broadest sense: employee engagement, supply chain relations, climate change, circular economy, community commitments, ethical finance, and so much more. It's a very, very broad picture. And our aim today is to deliver a productive and innovative sessions. So we packed the day with some very exciting discussions, visual stimulation, top-notch networking, and literally fun and games. Please do take the time to take the Future Cities tour, pose with the wild animals for WWF, try your hand at Eco Action Trumps. This is a game that actually believes in climate change, unlike the US presidential candidate of similar name. Note to Paula, have a rethink on that name. Today's event are really about engaging and sharing, and your role is to question, critique, and applaud our special guests as they lay out their plans for developing and delivering a more sustainable, healthy, and positive future. A few important tips to make your day more comfortable. The toilets are located up the stairs to the right. If the fire alarm sounds, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. There are 2 fire marshals on hand here in wearing green. Okay, they're up there in the back. Have a look at them. We've turned off the lights to make it so you can really pick them out. The muster point is the silver structure across from the main entrance where you came in this morning, and marshals will be on hand to assist you. Coffee breaks and lunch will be served downstairs in the street. So it's my great pleasure to introduce the conference keynote speaker, Katherine Howarth. She's the CEO of ShareAction. Katherine is one of the top advocates for tax justice, fair pay, and corporate responsibility. She's been leading ShareAction for almost a decade, working to empower investors, to help influence the behavior of companies and their impact on society and the environment. Katherine is going to give us a democratic perspective on social responsibility. Katherine.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's a huge pleasure and an honor to be the first speaker at the first CSR conference of these awards. So congratulations to Karen for getting this going. I know she's put an amazing amount of work into it. And I'm really pleased to be here, partly because I want to build stronger links between the world that I inhabit on a day-to-day basis, which is the investment world, and interacting with asset managers and pension funds and so on, and your world, the world of people who inside companies and organizations push the agenda of corporate responsibility. I'm wearing my little Sustainable Development Goals badge because I am a massive believer, by the way, in the Sustainable Development Goals, which were, as you know, just launched last September. And it's just this incredible, inspiring to-do list for the world. And I think we all know that if you've got a clear goal, it really helps with motivating action and with moving towards action. But what's amazing about the Sustainable Development Goals is that, unlike what came before the Millennium Development Goals, business and the role of business and the potential of business to transform our world is absolutely front and central. So it's just an acknowledgement of the incredibly important role that business has to play in solving the world's great problems. And I would really encourage you, in all that you do, to report on the amazing things that are going on in your companies and organizations, to reference the framework of the goals and to report what you're doing against goal 1, goal 4, because we have to kind of build this real energy around that. But look, the real theme for the morning is investors, and corporate responsibilities. And I want to focus on the question of whether shareholders are the enemy of CSR, or whether in fact shareholders can become serious and significant champions of CSR. Can shareholders in fact strengthen the mandate internally, and particularly from the top of companies, for serious-minded corporate responsibility action? The received wisdom, of course, is that shareholders at their best are disinterested and at worst are pretty hostile to companies using resources, energy, skills on any activities that don't immediately monetize and add to the bottom line. The business of business is business. But what is emerging to challenge that received wisdom is a powerful accumulation of evidence that companies with superior sustainability performance, companies that pay real attention to the needs and interests of their stakeholders and the impacts that they make on the world, are outperforming financially. Not always by huge amounts, not always in all cases, but enough overall within the business community, and particularly in the public equities listed world, that it counts. It's a real differentiator. And for people whose job it is, in asset management in particular, to pick successful stocks that will make money, this is an important body of evidence, and it's now being paid close attention to. And I point in particular to a really fantastic study from Arabesque Partners that was done with the University of Oxford, that was a kind of analysis of 200 different studies that just makes this very compelling point that sustainability leaders are outperforming. So that's like marvelous. At the risk of saying something sort of unbelievably obvious, the views and priorities of shareholders really do matter to the people who run and sit on the boards of companies. So let's just rehearse a few facts here. Shareholders appoint the directors of companies, and they can vote them off when they're not happy. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen, and it sits in the background, in the mind of directors that, you know, they can be booted off by the shareholders who get unhappy. In public companies, shareholders approve the executive remuneration policy, which is a binding vote that takes place every 3 years, and annually they vote on the directors' remuneration report, which looks backwards on what was paid out to the directors and what kind of bonuses they got and so on. And as we've seen just very recently over the last few weeks, there are more and more instances of shareholders flexing their muscles. So Bob Dudley of BP and his board faced the humiliation, frankly, of a pay defeat just a few weeks ago at the BP AGM. So for people in BP that are responsible for corporate responsibility, responsible for the image of the company, it's just a hideous day when every single news bulletin during the day is reflecting this shareholder defeat of the company, this humiliating outcome that shareholders are just deeply displeased with the corporate management. So there is this, and I think it's in many ways a healthy tension between shareholders and boards of companies, where there is a quite powerful set of rights that are attached to shareholdings that allow shareholders to flex their muscles. And this is why we who believe passionately in CSR absolutely have to find ways of bringing shareholders on side with us. So why do shareholders have these rights? Well, investors risk their capital, and in return for that, they have been given these privileged rights. Which brings me to the occasion of the annual general meeting. The annual general meeting is enshrined in law. Boards and companies have to have one. I have been to very, very many of these occasions, and my experience of them is that very often a lot of the directors who sit there would dearly love for there to be no such thing as the annual shareholders meeting. It would be so much easier in many ways if there wasn't such a thing to have to go through every year. But you know, this is part of the body of rights that shareholders have. that gives them the opportunity to hold accountable the board of directors who are stewarding their capital. So ShareAction, the charity that I run, our purpose is to try to help catalyse an investment system that's truly a force for good. And a lot of that is about influencing the biggest shareholders in the market, and I'll come on to that in a moment. But we know that the annual general meeting of a company is just a marvellous opportunity to raise points about the company's corporate responsibility performance. And here I'm going to give you a few pictures of some of the lovely people in our fondly called AGM army who attend the annual shareholders meeting of many of the UK's biggest companies. And we're right in the middle, right now, of AGM season. It's great fun. We were out at 12 AGMs last week. We're out at 15 AGMs this week, I think. And we have this little kind of, very important to take a selfie. Social media has really opened up the space of the annual shareholders meeting. And you get extra brownie points if you come back with a CEO selfie. Can you persuade the CEO to pose with you in front of the corporate logo to take a selfie? That's quite good fun. Not everyone comes back with a CEO selfie. But it's a serious business. We are asking companies questions on tax transparency, on country-by-country reporting of tax, on access to medicines, particularly at the moment, big focus on both Pfizer, obviously a US company, and GSK, making accessible PCV vaccine, which is for pneumonia, which I only learned very recently. Pneumonia is the biggest single killer of children under 5 globally. Completely resolvable if you take the vaccine. The vaccine's in the hands of just 2 companies. It's a duopoly, GSK and Pfizer. Major sort of, it's a hugely profitable drug for both companies. And there's a real tussle going on. And very important that shareholders are engaged with the dynamics around that. We're working on that with Médecins Sans Frontières. Animal welfare, huge number of questions at the moment on the wide range of social and environmental impacts of sort of factory farming and the whole manner in which meat is raised, slaughtered, and sits in the supply chain of the world's biggest restaurant companies, food companies, and so on. Gender equality, renewable energy. We're a really bothersome force, ShareAction and our AGM army. But actually, what we've learned to do is to pose these questions and raise these issues in a very respectful manner. And I want to just tell you about a wonderful man called Barry Stead, who's really the inspiration in many ways for what we do at annual shareholder meetings. Barry is a retired solicitor, and over his lifetime he's built up a portfolio of shares, and he's very much a bona fide shareholder. He depends on the income from those shares. It's an important part of his retirement income. But Barry is passionate about corporate responsibility. He absolutely wants the companies that he's a shareholder in to be doing the right thing. And he is a really charming old chap, very well spoken. And he goes along, and he has, over the last 4 years, asked an extraordinary number of FTSE 100 companies whether they would commit to becoming accredited living wage employers. And one by one, they fell. Like dominoes. We now have 30% of the FTSE 100 are accredited living wage employers. I mean, this has of course been a collaboration with the Living Wage Foundation and Citizens UK and so on. But the voice of the shareholder at the AGM, meeting the full board of directors, particularly the non-execs, who actually get very little access to information other than through these slip packs that are prepared for the board by people internally in the company. They're quite hungry often for sources of information, for sense of critique of the company that come from the outside world, and the AGM is a brilliant opportunity to meet and influence them. So Barry's sort of style of questioning involves careful reading of the annual review, quite a flattering question to the company, usually, and there's, you know, a lot to compliment, followed by just a sense that, wouldn't it be nice, couldn't the directors possibly disagree with the idea that everybody in the company, including the cleaners and the catering staff that work for contractors, should be paid the living wage? And directors, as we know, are quite well paid. It's very awkward for them to be confronted by this question by such a charming old gent who's a long-standing shareholder in the company and really does wish the company well. And so Barry has been amazingly successful. And another recruit, a really fantastic foot soldier in the AGM army, is my own mum, who is also who's a retired teacher. Yesterday she was at William Hill's AGM. Last week she was at Ocado's AGM. Amazingly, Ocado, she was the only person there who asked a question at Ocado's AGM. I mean, often these are a tiny affair. I'll come on to why that is in a minute, but she ended up having a long, detailed conversation with one of the directors who's a founder of Ocado and sits on the executive board, and he was very interested in the question on, I mean, genuinely so, because I think Ocado is a very responsible company, on the supply chain, factory farming, and whether the company could do more to promote sort of non-meat protein alternatives when you go on the site. And, you know, these companies have such an important role in shaping our consumer behaviours. And it really helps when the shareholders are pressing them to engage with the right path on these things. And what's rather lovely is that these activities of ours in the space of the AGM setting result in people internally, particularly people responsible for corporate responsibility, sort of discreetly saying, do come back. It's very, very helpful. Which is really nice. And why wouldn't we want to be helpful to the people who day in and day out inside these companies are championing these issues and trying to make real headway? And it is, you know, important to influence the board, because when these things come down from the top, as we know, it does help to give a real mandate for action to people who are working on this stuff internally. But the real name of the game is influencing the big institutional investors. It's all very well, our lovely cheeky chappies, and they do an amazing job. I'm very proud, and we have a string of really terrific victories in terms of persuading companies down a path and really engaging with an issue as a result of raising an issue. But the institutional investors have the really powerful shareholders. They are the ones that can put directors off boards. They are the ones that have a serious sway when it comes to the remuneration report, etc., and the ability to put a company all over the news headlines when it gets a shareholder defeat. So, how do we influence the big institutional investors? And I just want to give a sense of the huge shift that's taken place over the last sort of 40 years in Britain, where most shareholdings used to be held by individuals like Barry, by kind of people with a bit of money, that sometimes with a lot of money, but you know, just individuals. Now just 11% of the shareholder base of our biggest companies is held by individuals. It overwhelmingly pension funds, asset managers, both in the UK and globally, that own the substantial shareholdings in our major companies. And so when we say shareholders risk their capital, bizarrely, that's not really true anymore. The shareholders are looking after other people's money. Whose money? Ours, all of us. We are, indirectly, through our pension funds, the shareholders of the biggest companies in our economy. It's other people's money, and the art and the kind of what we really kind of drive at ShareAction, and I hope it really connects with all of you, is finding ways to hold accountable the institutional investors for the power they wield and the influence they have over companies in ways that really gives a mandate to the work that you are doing inside companies to drive forward CSR. So public attitudes to CSR, as you know, are extremely supportive. Even in the context of thinking about what their pension fund should do, A recent YouGov poll showed that 54% of people in Britain want their pensions and savings to have a positive impact on the world beyond making money. The younger generation are particularly engaged. 60% of under 35s want their pension funds to provide reporting on the social and environmental impacts of the companies in their pension fund portfolios. And of course, with automatic enrolment, we're all in this together now. This is an amazing democratisation of the shareholder space in Britain, in a way, except that there's a sort of quite serious democratic deficit between the real pension fund members and the institutional investors that look after their money. But automatic enrolment means that even the humblest of workers are now shareholders indirectly through the pension fund system. This is, quite honestly, an amazing opportunity to build a different kind of public mandate, a powerful one that reflects the power of the shareholders for the work that you do on CSR. So how is the pension fund and investment world responding both to the accumulating evidence that CSR and sustainability really counts financially, and to the public's support for action on their behalf as pension savers to support responsible and sustainable behaviour by the companies that they're invested in? Well, quite honestly, it's a mixed picture. So on the plus side, there are important moves developing within the investment world, and I would point, of course, to many of you will be aware of the Principles for Responsible Investment, which an organisation globally, based in London actually, but with global reach, that started just 10 years ago and now has 50% of all invested assets signed up to these 6 principles of responsible stewardship of companies, that takes account of their social and environmental impact and pushes them towards more sustainable behaviour. So that's great. In many ways, ESG thinking, to use the jargon inside the investment world, has gone mainstream, and we're beginning to see some of the leaders, like company like Web Asset Management or Impacts Asset Management, are now actually producing impact reports for their equity funds. They're not just producing details of the financial performance of these funds, but trying, and it's kind of in some ways early days in terms of the methodology, to produce serious impact reporting on their equity funds, which means, what is that impact? It's the impact of the companies in the portfolio. It means that we've got investors reporting to their own clients on the performance of the companies that you belong to and are part of. And so that's a really interesting shift. Now, I would say that impact reporting is still kind of a fringe activity for the most progressive firms, but I think it's going to change quite quickly if we do if we move and motivate that action. CSR for the fund management industry has really changed. CSR for the fund management industry used to be, you know, the usual kind of days out with staff teams to do really valuable things, but a bit peripheral to the core business of the asset management firm. CSR for asset management firms really is now about responsible investment activity. It's no longer okay for them to just report on their own CSR without reference to the portfolios and the enormous impact that they have when they cast votes at company AGMs, etc. So that's positive. On the other hand, short-termism still reigns enormously supreme in the investment world, and unfortunately the incentives of a lot of portfolio managers are not yet deeply and helpfully aligned with the agenda that we support here in this room. So we're not there by any means. But how do we start to shift those incentives and really move the investment community in the right direction? Well, we've got these lovely cards. And I hope they're all going to flash yes, not purple. But I just wanted to ask, how many of you know what your pension fund is doing to promote sustainable and responsible behaviour by the companies that you are invested in? Honestly. Oh, a lot of purple. Okay, well, there's some yeses, which is brilliant. But I mean, the reality is pension funds have not gone out of their way to make this easy. I mean, we at ShareAction have these digital tools which allow you to go onto our website and type in the name of your pension fund and send them an email asking them what they're doing to promote sustainable and responsible behaviours in the companies they invest in on your behalf. This is your money. We should be so much more assertive than we are when it comes to our pension funds. But, you know, it's an impenetrable world and it hasn't been made easy to access. But we can truly bring the investment and pensions industry on board if they hear from us loud and clear. And you are the best possible advocates of this because you live and breathe this. You understand it. You understand the business case for it. And I would really encourage you to think about #PensionPower, engaging with your pension fund. The reality is that the environmental challenges and the social challenges that our world faces absolutely need, and this is go back to my very opening point, we need to harness the creativity, the skills, the drive, the inventiveness of business. And we need to do more than just harness it. We actually need to release it and give CSR a bold mandate from the most powerful of a company's stakeholders, its shareholders. And you can help to make that happen. So if you do one thing after today's conference that you weren't planning on doing before, I would really encourage you to knock on the door of your pension fund, to engage with whoever it is in your own organisation that's responsible for your company or your organisation's pension fund. And ShareAction has all sorts of resources to help you make this easy and to help you team up with other people that are in the same pension fund. Aviva, for example, is a fund that we deal with a lot. Anyone here in the room has their pension savings with Aviva? Quite a few. Interesting. Well, look, Aviva is currently considering doing its first ever pension fund AGM, a meeting not for the shareholders, but for the people who have all of their retirement savings or some of their retirement savings entrusted to Aviva on your behalf. We're trying to open up this space in a way that hasn't been done. They're kind of, will we, won't we? They've actually kind of agreed to it, but they're ever so nervous about it, I have to say. But, you know, what would be nice is if on the day that Aviva holds its first ever pension fund general meeting for people that have their savings with Aviva, there were people like you in the room that are truly, deeply knowledgeable, committed, and engaged with corporate responsibility and sustainability, who were to give them that kind of encouragement, that mandate, and that support to invest for the long term and for the public good. I'll leave it there.